Hello, Brian.
Hi, Haley.
How are
I
you today?
I'm doing great. A little tired because I've been proofreading and reproofreading the manuscript of my memoir. Um, you know, wanting it out, and the process is so long. But I'm patient. I wasn't patient when I was younger. I was impetuous and impatient and controlling, although I'm still controlling. Uh, but so you and I were talking a little bit before we started about, does patience come with age, or is it a choice? Where does patience come from?
I it's interesting that we're talking about this because this has been sort of one of the key themes in my work with my clients over the last 2 weeks is
Ah,
patience. It's not just an overnight thing. And I have been talking a lot about childhood and sort of the difference between how we function as children, sort of before the age of 6 or 8, and then how we sort of function once we decide to start the hero's journey. And I see sort of the hero's journey as sort of unwinding and winding more into sort of that childlike state where patience doesn't have to be thought about as much and not so much effort has to go into patience. Because I think if you look at younger children, they may not have a lot of patience, but they do have a very strong sense of knowing so that they only really go after things that they know that they want.
yeah,
And they will have sort of these tantrums when it's more of a fight of will versus I need that. So I think for me, the idea of patience, it gets harder the older that we are or the older that we become, because I think we get more worried about how much time do we have.
and I would argue, not dismissing your argument, that in my life experience, patience can come with age. That, as you get older, you've fought so many fights and you've learned a lot of lessons from those fights. And one lesson you've learned is there's no sense in spinning your wheels because it's not going to hurry things up. All it's going to do is exhaust you and irritate the other person. So, for me only, Haley, and I'm just talking about my life experience, uh, I just know that I'm more patient and I'm less picky. You know,
But did
things
you
don't
make that choice?
yeah, things don't have to be perfect anymore. They had to be perfect before, but
Yeah.
not anymore.
But I think at some point we make a choice. And I think for me, I align that with the choice to be on the path, to sort of the choice to say, I think my life can be different and better. I think that choice aligns with the choice of, I'm really going to try on this patience thing. And the more that we are on the path, the more that we are focusing on sort of experience life different, we start to embrace patience.
Do you remember when we first met? And who did you tell me was my spirit guide?
Oh, St. Francis.
Yeah, we had just met, and and I knew St. Francis was my spirit guide, but how would you know, right? So in for me, uh, a big part of my patience is spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't feel like it's all on me. I also have a extraordinary husband, 49 years almost, who he's constantly got my back. There's nothing I can do that's going to make him not like me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or that I can think of. And so I've got that to fall back on and feel like I've got a safety net. So it's easier to free fall with patience than it is if I didn't have that. But it's also, if you commit yourself to the power of God, the power of the universe, for me, power of Holy Spirit. Uh, it also increases the likelihood I'm going to be patient because I'm not alone.
I call that the sense of knowing. And again, I align that with being on the path and really being more curious about who am I and what am I doing here, is that we start to really have a sense of faith that everything's working out for the better and that we aren't alone and we're not needing to be so desperate. And I think with that sense of knowing that I'm okay, everything's going to be okay, that allows us to open up into the patience and to be able to say, I'm okay. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is working out in exactly the right time.
In my in writing this memoir and reading it over and over, I think I told you I see great changes in myself. That when after I was fired, after 25 years of struggling with, what does it mean to be gay and how does it fit into my faith? And then I was fired and I started getting invited to speak, everywhere. I realized that in the beginning, I was asking for approval.
Mm.
Uh, and so impatiently, I had to be the very best ringmaster that they've ever seen. And I was, but I'd go back to my room and just fall on my bed, reach for the phone and call Ray because he was the only one I could talk to, right? But as I grew in confidence, Haley, and no longer needed people's approval because I gave it to myself, there was a change in my attitude towards life, going back to this theme of patience. I was more patient with life because I knew that I didn't have to do somersaults in order to get people's approval because I wasn't looking for their approval. What I was looking for was to be the very best ambassador they could possibly have encountered on this issue at that time. Does that make sense? Are you relating to this?
And when you say that, like patience in life, are you saying in life or patience in yourself? Or do you see them as different things?
I think they're, I'd argue maybe that they're one and the same because I think uh, when we make the journey ourselves, and we make it over and over and over again, there's not one hero's journey. There, it can be 100 in your
It's
life.
continuous, yeah.
Yeah, it's ongoing. That when you come to the conclusion that you're okay, that you don't need anything other than your relationship with God, and to do your best work, and of course your relationship with your beloved. When you come to that point, I think everything sort of takes its place. It's like the pieces of the puzzle fit in. So it's much easier to have a patient view of life, right?
And I think it's important to note that you're at the point now where you can celebrate the patience and you can celebrate this moment of saying like it's easier to be in life. But let's not forget how much work it took.
Oh my God.
To get to that point, to get to the point of practicing patience so that you can reach sort of this moment now of being like, all right, I get it.
Holy mackerel. I mean, seriously, it was one test after another, after another, after another. And when I look back, from through the lens of being 76 and having lived, this extraordinarily interesting life and illuminative life, I I can initially feel embarrassed by how I did respond in the early challenges. I mean, in my book, I think I told you this story, but my friend Mary Lee Tatum, who was a high school sex educator, was trying to talk to the kids about the power of attraction. And she she reminded them of the cartoon character Woody Woodpecker. And do you know Woody Woodpecker?
Oh, I know
Okay,
Woody Woodpecker.
you probably know this story too, but Woody Woodpecker is busy doing important things, and a female woodpecker walks by and sort of, flirts, and his head opens up and his brain falls out, and his eyes are going round and round and round. And I've had those life experiences where I was totally, totally out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And I look back at it with embarrassment. But I forgive myself because I realize that's where I was. You know, that's where I was. And if there was another person involved, I apologize to them. And each time I do, they say, "Oh, please." I was I was doing the same kind of crazy stuff. So that's helpful.
And I think being able to look back with that cringe, because I think there's all things that we've done in our lives that has cringe. I
Oh,
like to think that like looking back and feeling that cringe is almost a sense of gratitude now that you've grown enough that you wouldn't like it would be almost impossible for you to repeat that.
yes.
And it's
Yeah.
sort of like the cringe kicks off gratitude of like, oh my God. Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God I'm not
No.
that person anymore.
Yes, I know. I have apologized to so many people, to women that I dated, and I cringed that they had other options, but they dated me, and I wasn't being deceitful because I didn't know, you know, I was unable, I didn't have the courage yet to fully embrace the fact that I was gay. And so I kept hoping and hoping, that I was going to find the right girl or woman, and that all of these
That would
attractions
change it.
were going to go away and my love would be so intense. And of course, that can't happen if you're a Kinsey 6, you're way at the end of the scale. And so I feel badly about wasting their time. And yet, we both learned something from the experience.
And they had the privilege of your time too.
Well, thank you. I mean, they say that. Uh, they'll say that kindly. And the two that I was, two of the three that I was mostly involved with are married with kids, and the other came out as lesbian. So that's a clean wash.
I think everybody on their path, and I do firmly believe that everybody is in our life for a reason, whether it's for a second or 5 years. Everybody's in our reason. Like I do honestly believe that the people that you see walking on the street, they're there for a reason, and likewise, you're in their street for a reason.
Absolutely. When you walk in, Ray and I have been last couple of days at the surgeons who performed our surgery, mine spinal fusion and Ray knee replacement, and going to the hospitals to meet with the doctors for 6-week reviews. You'd come upon somebody who was clearly needing for you to hold the door, not for them to hold the door for you, right? So, and you figure it out quickly. Some people might say, "Oh, well, do you have any idea how much pain I'm in? Do you have any idea what I've gone through?" No, all I have to do is look at this person and how they're walking and the look on their face, and there's no question. You just step back, hold the door open, and those are not chance encounters.
No, they're an opportunity.
They are, and he leaves with an impression of what just happened, and we leave with an impression of what just happened, and that changes you.
What about those moments where and I don't know if you have this, but I certainly do, where you catch yourself in a skull, where you're looking at somebody and you're just like, nah, nah, something's off with that person. And you sort of have to be like, ooh.
Step back.
Like
yeah.
I have a few of those where I'm just like, there's, two people in my life, not like invitation to my life, but they're in my cloud. And I'm just like, every time I see them, I'm just like, you're not my person. You're not my person. Please stay over there. And I literally have to check my face because I'm like, I can feel the little like shifty
Yeah.
side eye coming on.
Yeah. Don't you dare come over
Don't
here.
even think about looking at me.
And yet, you both come to the same door at the grocery store and you make a decision. Are you going to walk ahead of them or are you going to hold the door?
You're gonna push them and be like, away. But
Well, that's your impulse.
you
But
know, it's
your hero's journey just grabs you and says, hold the door.
hold the door. And I think
Even
it's
if even if you hate them, hold the door.
yeah, and I think you make that choice like, all right, I'm feeling this, but I'm not actually gonna act on it. The
That's
side eye
exactly
might be the
right.
maximum that I act on it, and I've noticed I'm really trying to soften my face.
Yes, it's like you're at the door and somebody walks up in a Trump hat, and you think, oh, and yet you think it's a human being, Brian, and and hold the door, even if they're younger than you, hold the door, uh, and that's not going to change their views because I'm not wearing any hat, that it says Harris on it, but but they have had the life experience of encountering somebody who is kind to them. And
Hmm.
maybe some of their political feelings are the result of having a lifetime of no one being kind to them.
Right. True.
Them fighting for every single thing they have.
And sort of another perspective that I was thinking on patience is the patience to realize that it's none of your business.
Yeah, that's a hard one to let go of control.
Yeah, and I think for me that's still a stem of patience because you have to have the patience and the faith to realize that you're not called to be in everybody's business. You're not called to fix everybody's problems.
That's exactly right. Well, I still feel called to fix their problem. I do. I'm still codependent and struggling with boundaries, but that's okay. I like it. I don't. But going back to just the political scene, Haley, um, I haven't had the energy recently to read newspapers, not
Mm,
even the New York Times. You know, I'll read Heather Cox Richardson, who puts out what's called, I think, Letter to America. It's a morning review of what happened the day before. She's a big liberal, and if she starts writing about the 1850s, I just move on because I'm not interested. Thank you right now. But if she gives me a synopsis, I'll read it. But I don't want to read what all these opinion writers and even a liberal paper like the New York Times have to say about the election or about Trump people or Vance people. Um, I don't. I know who I'm voting for. I know who I've given money to. Not much because we don't have much, but given what money we have to, and there's nothing more I can do. I mean, especially in U.S. today, uh, the country's everybody knows how they're voting.
mhm.
They're a small group of undecided people. I can't sway them. They're either not being honest about being uh, uh, impartial or not decided. Uh, but one way or the other, I can't do anything about it
Mhm.
except be myself. Write from my heart and pay attention to the things I have some influence over.
I
Because everyone's around you, Haley. Here, you don't get it, but every email is a request for money.
mhm.
Every email, it's you get 30 of them, and I just delete, 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 delete. One, because we don't have the money, right?
I fully fathom how difficult life is in the US, and for that very reason, I choose not to live in the US. And I also am very grateful that I'm out of it. Um, Most of my clients are US based. So a lot of my conversations with clients now are dealing with anxiety that is heightened because we're close to elections. Um, in saying that too, sort of the ongoing theme that has been sort of the last 2, 3 weeks has been about patience. But I've also noticed that more and more of my clients are actively choosing or just can't bring themselves to be in the media, whether it's reading media or participating in the media. So I find that very interesting. I don't have an answer for it. I just find it interesting that more and more people are choosing to block the media and the
Yeah,
shenanigans that happens in the media.
it doesn't mean that they don't care. It's
It's not, I think that they're just, again, I don't know the answer, I haven't looked in it, but I do think it's not about not caring. It's not about ignorant. I think that they're just clearly seeing that that's not a fundamental source of information.
well, they will be say, yeah, it's an agitation.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, everything is an agitation. Even Rachel Maddow would be an agitation, and I adore her. But I think people hit a block,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't. It doesn't mean they're not going to vote. It doesn't mean that they aren't still the same good person that they were before they hit the block. But it can be emotional abuse to
Absolutely. I agree with that.
have to go through this election process. It's emotional abuse, and at some point, if you're wise enough, you stop it. You if you're with friends and they're talking about it and it's not upsetting you, you can sit and listen. If it starts to upset you, time out.
You
You
can
guys,
leave.
let's talk about the great baking cook-off or whatever.
It's it's very interesting, and it is, I think, just a boiling pot of, like, I almost see it as sort of this witch's brew, sort of Snow White and sort of that witch that was brewing up the apple, and there's like this green smoke coming out of it. That's sort of how I see sort of the frenzy of this election. And, not to discount how difficult it is to hold and have patience that there is going to be an outcome, that it actually does mean something. Perhaps it does mean something towards better, whatever the outcome is. But I think it's a very trying time for anybody, especially in the US, to have to navigate this on a daily basis because it's just so in your face, and there's so much about it that is difficult. And I feel like almost, and I don't know if this is an age thing too, every election seems to get more intense or more sort of life threatening. And
This
it's
this
not.
this one clearly is. I mean, this one really is. I mean, uh, I won't get into it, but if you've listened to any of it, uh, it's a very, 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 very important election, and all of us who uh, are terrified of a Trump victory, we're going to have to decide what to do.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are moving. They can't stay here anymore, uh, and that's hard. Not everyone is able to. Our nephew and niece pulled up stakes and moved to Madrid, not politically, just because it was a life experience, right? And they can now, in today's world, you can virtually work anywhere,
Right.
right? So, but I think there are people who feel that they're going to need to move for safety's sake.
And I think, one of the benefits that did come out of COVID is that we now know that, obviously you need resources to be able to do that, but it is possible. Like, if you do feel unsafe and if you do have the resources, you can leave.
Yeah.
and sort of get out of it. And I think one of the most important, again, this is my perspective, but I think it's incredibly important for a person to travel. I think it's incredibly important for somebody to experience life outside of the US so you have something to compare it against.
It's
So
very expensive. It's
it,
very expensive, and it takes a long time to get your visa.
it's incredibly expensive to exist in the US, not just if you're an immigrant. For an American citizen who has been in the US for generations, it's
Yeah,
incredibly difficult to have the life. And yes, it looks fantastic because you have lovely houses that have new appliances in them, you have your car, but that's all credit.
yeah. Well, maybe or maybe not, but
Yeah.
uh, just hearing from people who have moved to Portugal or to Spain, um, it was expensive to do it. Not not that they're leaving behind something, but the process of paying attorneys and having to buy a house, having to have 500,000 that you're bringing with you in order for the state to the country. I think people can move, but they're going to move to a third world country. And there's what, what's wrong with that? I mean,
Again,
I'm,
I think it comes down to what kind of life do you want? And I think what we're realizing very quickly is that the American dream has
mhm.
an enormous cost, and you can have a very healthy, peaceful life for a quarter of that cost. It still
Yeah,
costs something, but it's possible to have a very pleasant life, a very good life outside of the US. And I think, that very much contradicts the message and the propaganda that comes out of the US, which is this is the best it's going to get. Anything else is, to what you say, third world. And I think it's very important to be able to leave the US and to experience other countries, other cultures, to be able to really have that place of being able to say, all right, for me, is the US the best place for me, or is it somewhere else? And to sort of further elaborate on that, I was born in the US. I grew up in Zimbabwe, which is still considered a third world country by US standards. I went back to the US because I thought that the US was the bee's knees. It was the best country in the world, and you are incredibly lucky to be in the US. I went back to the US and I had some very sort of shocking things where I was just like, wow, this isn't matching up to the dream I had. And
yeah,
I spent, a good, gosh, 20 odd years in the US where I sort of considered myself, now I was more American. In that time, I very clearly saw how difficult life was. And I had the experience of being in the US with a bunch of money, which makes it enjoyable,
yep,
being in the US without any money, which makes it incredibly difficult and scary.
yep,
And now also leaving the US and having the choice now of, do I want to go back into the US or am I okay where I am? And every single day I make that choice that I'm actually happier outside of the US. And it is for those reasons that I'm not in the election drama. I don't want to be in the election drama. I live in Mexico for the very choice that my life is more peaceful here. I can enjoy and I can pay for my life here. If I went into the US, I would have to raise all of my prices, literally double my prices.
uh-huh. Haley, how many years did you spend in Zimbabwe?
18.
And how old were you when you left the U.S. for Zimbabwe?
I was months old, like 5 months old. I was a
Okay,
green card baby.
okay, so 18 years old, and you came to the U.S. Now, this is just doesn't have anything to do with patients, but a lot of people who convert to Catholicism become super Catholic. They become more Catholic than Catholics are. That those of us who were born into the faith. when somebody becomes a U.S. citizen, do they become super American or yes?
I I would change it from not necessarily US citizen, but to somebody that moves and can live and work in the US, whether they're a citizen or not. I think you become Americanized. And for me, that you start to consume. You consume an enormous amount, and now you're caught up in this consuming cycle.
Yeah. Consumption, for me, consumption is, well, this is consumption, but it's not about food. Um, a highlight for me of living in the U.S. is having watched the Democratic Convention, and you see Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey and all these incredible women speaking, and you think, where else is this going to happen? Where all these women and people of color come together and support and joyous support, not shaking the fist support. I mean, that was a plus for me. I don't watch the World Series or the NBA finals or Super Bowl. That's I don't get anything out of that. And I don't eat lobster and I you know, I don't care what cut of meat it is. Uh, that's not important to me. I could eat your Mexican diet quite happily, get and learn how to cook it myself. But having grown up in the US, I I grew up with a lot of promise. Now I'm a lot older than you are, and so I was a baby in the 50s, and and there was terrible things going on, but I didn't know anything about it. I was shielded from all of that. But there was, this red, white, and blue, and we have good politicians and we have good judges, and we're going to do the right thing. And I believed all of that. So it's hard to dismiss it as unreal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of me that the flag is, and I'm not a boundary person. I think boundaries are silly. I think the U.S. and Canada ought to be one country. What are these boundaries about? Mexico and California. I mean, it's just boundaries are silly. Wars are fought. You know, different standards of living. Just to compare, I've gotten involved in Haiti recently, and to compare Haiti, which I think has 1/3 of the island, and the Dominican Republic that has 2/3 of the island,
Mm-hmm.
and the lifestyles of the two people, it's just, you think, how can this happen? How can these neighbors have, it's like, okay, you're going to be really poor and you're going to be really wealthy, and the border between you is insignificant. How does that happen?
Politics.
Yeah, it is politics. It was
It's
the French.
politics.
It was the French taking over Haiti and
But
using
also,
it.
I mean, it's not just, to be honest, it's not just the French that are in Haiti. The US is in Haiti too.
Oh, no, 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 no. I know it
So,
started with the French.
yeah.
Started with the French, and then
So,
the U.S. took over.
yeah. And it sort of goes into that whole talk about colonialism and
Yeah, yeah,
secularism.
yeah. Yeah, oh, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. The U.S. has done horrible, horrible things, and I do not defend it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm as embarrassed about it as we were talking about, shuddering
Oh,
at
the cringe.
what we did, the cringe of what we did in our youth.
So,
So
with sort of that knowing of the things that the US has done and continues to do, where does that put you with this election? Because Kamala Harris, her foreign policy is the same as Trump's. It's not changing anything.
it, Haley, first of all, I don't understand foreign policy. I think it's, if it was easy, everyone would get it and everyone would be on the same side, right?
Mm.
Uh, uh, I welcome immigration. You know, if all the white people who have money leave the country because of Trump, they're going to have a nation of the immigrants they were making fun of for eating cats, you know, uh, during the election. So why Harris over Trump? That's just a no-brainer for me. I mean, when you have a man who makes fun of somebody with cerebral palsy in front of thousands of people, doing this routine like somebody, I don't want anybody like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, J.D. Vance acknowledges that he made up the story about Haitians eating people's pets. He acknowledges that he made it up, but he kept going with it because it helped their cause. How do you let somebody like that lead your nation? It's Kamala Harris is, for me, an honorable person, and she's going to make decisions that I'm more comfortable with than I would ever be comfortable with decisions made by Trump and
Mm-hmm.
Vance. So it's not about foreign policy.
Okay, it's more about
It's
US
not. It is.
national.
It's about values for me,
Mm-hmm.
the individual's values and the party's values. There's no dissent in the Republican Party about the behavior of their candidate. None. No one will speak against him because they're terrified if they do, they'll lose the next election, right? Most of the politicians don't speak up because they're afraid if they're not MAGA Republicans. All right, this is maybe far more political than you wanted to be, but you asked the question.
I'm in it. I'm with you. Carry on
Okay,
going.
so so I I don't understand. I really can't say. I'm not an expert on immigration. I don't know what it costs the country. Um, I do believe it's totally made up that immigrants are trying to vote illegally. I don't know whether immigrants get Social Security or Medicare. I'm not. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that I love people, right? And if they're looking for a better life, I want to help them. And we have so much damn land in this country that's unoccupied. You know, you can drive for hundreds and hundreds of miles and not see, a house, right? As you're going cross country. Well, why can't people live there? And if they want to live in Wilton Manors, I'll move there to make it possible for them to live here. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
What I care about are policies and values that enhance the life of other people, regardless of their skin color, religion, whatever. I think I maybe told you about this 2 weeks ago, but this powerful meme on Facebook with this, little black girl, and it was being questioned: Are you Muslim? Are you Hindu? Are you Jewish? Are you Christian? And she said, I'm hungry. What difference does it make what religion you are? Give her a piece of bread.
I think we have different views on the whole political parties, but I think when it comes to humanity, we see the same thing. And I think, the privilege of having time with you is that you allow the space for it to come down to humanity. And I think that's the more that we can have these type of conversations where we can be so divergent in political policies, but still be able to have the patience to distill it down to it's just about humanity. Mm-hmm. It's just about equal rights for all humans. I think if we can have more of those conversations and more people are realizing that we're all fighting for the same thing, just in different ways.
Haley, if I could correct that, I think many of us are fighting for the same thing. And I think those of us who are fighting for the same thing are altruistic. Mm-hmm. We believe in rising everybody up, right? There are some people, I think, who are afraid of losing what they have.
Exactly. They're afraid of losing their rights.
Right.
As they're giving to other people.
Right. So and they're afraid of having things taken away from them. Mm-hmm. Especially jobs. Well, you know who's taking jobs? AI is taking jobs. It's not a,
Well,
it's not, it's artificial intelligence. Every scientist is telling us that. You know, prepare for a world run by artificial intelligence.
it's a the I don't get the artificial intelligence, but
You
it is
don't get
in my
what?
life.
I
It's
don't get. I can't
I
get it either. You know.
I don't know how, like, it is very much like seeping into my life, and I'm surprised how much people use sort of the chat GBT and those kinds of things. Um, but I think, we are moving into a place of artificial intelligence, but I think that all comes down to the information and sort of really, if we're looking to make a difference and we're wanting things to be different, we have to be more conscious and more patient with the information that we're consuming. And I think one of the things, as I was saying, that I've noticed with this election is there is more of that. There is far more people having patience rather than just consuming the media as it comes in. Far more people this election are being more patient and being more careful with the information that they're taking in.
Uh-huh.
And, it's incredibly dangerous what Trump and JD Vance said about immigrants eating pets. But I think what we're seeing is that far more people, the greater majority, heard that and were just like, this is ridiculous. This is, it became a meme, it became a laughing point. It's sad that it came to that, but I think it's also a reflection of there is this shift where people are being more conscious with their sourcing of information. And so I think when we're talking about immigrants, when we're talking about where are the jobs going, we're at the point now where people are starting to get better information about what that actually is.
The Vance and Trump thing about Haitians eating pets.
They have a thing with pets because Vance was also like the thing about cat ladies.
Yeah, one of the things that you and I can say, that's not just a stupid thing to say; it's an evil thing to say because because it may make us laugh with ridicule,
Mm-hmm.
but the lives of the Haitians in those towns in Ohio, Vance's own state, there were 30 bomb threats last week that closed every elementary school in the city.
Yeah.
30 bomb threats. Those bomb threats were aimed at Haitian people who have been living in Springfield for years and years and years, or second generation or whatever. They feel scared, and that's not right. It's not. It's just
and
not right.
I have a basic standard, and it's based on intention. You're either a person that acts with good intention, your thoughts, words, and actions are good intention, or you're a person that is malintention. And I think with that, we can very clearly see that that has malintention. It was put out there for the very specific purpose of creating trauma and creating violence. I think, the point that I was making is that more people, not everybody, but more people are sitting back and being far more patient with how they're sourcing the information. I think the fact that we have to sit back and look at is that it's not just JD Vance and Trump saying these things. Is a large group of people that we all know that we allow to behave badly, and we just say, oh, that's Uncle Jim.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think that's happening as much. I think we're isolating ourselves from Uncle Jim.
I think that's the difference that we're seeing with this election, is that we're seeing more people kind of being like, that behavior is ridiculous, or those words are ridiculous. And they're now sort of embracing sort of that population that is at the center of that meme that is now. But we don't hear about those stories in the media. We hear
Well, we know
about
that.
the how, other members of society are protecting vulnerable communities, doing
Uh-huh.
what they can to protect vulnerable communities.
Yeah, I would love to hear more of that. I'd love to just be able to read one periodical that just told me good news about the things
Mhm.
people are doing, that inspire me and feed me and make me feel like I'm not alone, you know, because you can feel, I mean, all of our friends, um, feel similarly to us. All of them are disgusted by Trump and what he says, and just so I'm grateful for that, at least, that it's not. Can I? This is awkward for me, but I want to ask you a question. You brought up finance and immigration, and I don't. These are policies that I don't know anything really about. You said we identify with different parties. Is that?
I don't identify with a party.
Oh, okay, 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 okay.
I vote based. So continue with your question.
Is a woman's right to choose an issue for you?
Yes. And the reason why a woman's right to choose is an issue for me because it comes down to the basic human rights. I believe every single human on this planet has exactly the same amount of rights. And if a man has the right to choose, so does a woman. If a white person has the right to choose and the right to life, so does a colored person.
Yeah. Um, good. Okay. I'm breathing a little easier.
This is one of the reasons why I don't live in the US
Uh-huh.
because there is the idea, the propaganda that there is equality is absolute nonsense.
It is nonsense.
It's absolute nonsense. So it's dangerous to be a woman in the US just as it is dangerous to be a woman in Somalia. You know, there's more guns in the US. Your children are incredibly, in a lot of danger just going to school in the US. We don't
I
hear
know,
about those anymore.
I know people talk about how, there's nostalgia stuff that comes up on YouTube, on Facebook, and people were talking about that. uh, it was kids today are going to be really different than we were because they're using all this electronic stuff. And I wrote back and I said, when I was a kid, we'd hide under a desk to protect ourselves from an atomic bomb. The nuns would have us do that. Today's kids have shooters.
Mm-hmm.
They have drills about how to protect yourself when a gunman, one of your classmates, starts shooting you. We didn't have to deal with that, right? So
No.
each generation, we can be nostalgic and think about hula hoops and
Who's doing better? It's
yeah.
relevant because we have
It's
to
it,
look about now.
Today's kids are becoming who they're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution doesn't stop, right?
There's a
And
reason that they're today's kids.
there is, and they're going to scratch their heads when their teenagers are doing something totally from their perspective that's insane and
Mm-hmm.
self-destructive. But that's the movement of evolution, right?
And consciousness.
And consciousness. So I don't love uh, the world that I see around me. Um, when I was growing up, if you saw somebody talking to themselves on the sidewalk, they were mentally ill. Now everyone's talking to themselves. Seriously, everyone in the grocery store is on the telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll hear talking and I'll think, are they talking to me? No, they have nothing to do with you. They're talking to their friend about a party
Mm-hmm.
they do.
They're
Right?
not waving at you.
No, it scares me a little bit because there's no interaction
Mm-hmm.
between us, right? None, zero. Standing in line behind somebody in the grocery store who's on the telephone, and you're hoping that they end the call or pay attention to putting their credit card in, so you're not standing there, an extra amount of time. Kids walking down the street, moving their, I think, okay, it's not my world, I'm going to be out of here before you know it. But boy, it scares me a little bit. And then I think, Brian, you're not in charge, right?
Have patience.
Have patience and wisdom.
Yeah.
Go, you've had your turn. There are things you can still do, but they're not things that you're going to do to try to change their lives, because they live really privileged lives.
But also, you're changing, if we come back down to that whole notion of patience, you are changing lives with every person that comes to you and says, Brian, can you talk to me?
I wasn't changing lives.
You are. And
yeah.
you are continuing to change lives, because you do spend a lot of time having conversations with people.
Yeah, I would say most of my life. I just hundreds and hundreds of phone calls and letters that you had to type back, couldn't email, right? And Haley, I don't take bows for that. I really, really, really don't. I going back to you telling me that Francis was my spirit guide. I believe, because I say the prayer of St. Francis, right, where I'm asking that, it is better to give than receive, take instead of asking for love, give love. If you center yourself, and there are many people who think what I just said is the stupidest thing in the world, because they think that I'm praying to imaginary people in the sky. And I can't prove to them, and I can't even prove to myself, that what I'm saying is true. But I can tell them that I've had enough life experiences that tell me very clearly that there's a life force bigger than me and them, that it is so powerful and so present in my life, that's what I give credit to for answering the mail and taking the phone calls. Seriously, Haley, I do. I do it in the book. I tell you in the book.
And I call that love. I very much, and I do every day, and have to do it more. Really center myself in terms of, all right, what am I doing today? How am I being the person that I'm trying to project into this world? How am I doing with that? And it does come down to, believing in love, and that we are all of love. And even if we're not hearing all of the stories of people being of love, because they're being overshadowed by people with different definitions of love or fearful definitions of love, I do my best to go searching for the people that are being heroes of love. And I think that, and when I find those, I always send them on, try and highlight them on Instagram or something. But I do see that there are, for every terrible story out there that comes from malintention, there is a balancing story of good intention, loving intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for me, what helps me to feel a little bit more proactive on the greater world scale is highlighting those stories. And I think, if we all maybe did that, speaking about AI, if we all started sharing the good stories, and actively seeking out the good stories, we change the AI, we change the algorithm.
I'll tell you the challenge, because I've been I know we only have 6 minutes, but I've been so busy with the copy editing of my book. I've wanted to post on Facebook, but I know that every time I do, I'm going to get 100 people who need a response, and I don't have the time. I want to post.
But you can do that on ChatGPT, Brian.
Yeah, but can I say something about having the intention when you get up to be a loving person. It
Mm-hmm.
starts immediately. It starts with yourself.
Yeah.
You trip and you say, "Oh, how stupid!" Stop. Give yourself a break. Your mind was someplace else. You're tired, whatever. The dude walks in to the bathroom and shoves you over a little bit while you're brushing your teeth, right? It's not an issue. You
It's
love the guy. Nothing is worth
the
fighting,
side eye, the
right?
person with the side eye. But again, that's sort of that choice of stop. Are you being a loving person?
Absolutely. And you walk out of the door and somebody walks by and you take the initiative to say good morning,
Yeah.
right? Buenos dias, right? And then you go to the market or wherever, you take the initiative to be the loving person. That's for me what Frances is all about. It's not the big stuff, it's the everyday
It's
stuff.
the every moment that you have to be the best possible version of yourself. And, you know, I think we're doing it. And finally, we're experiencing some sweetness of patience because there's still a growing curve.
Oh my God.
There's still things where I had my, I know we're about to finish, but I had my acupuncture session yesterday. And my therapist who does the acupuncture was telling me, she's like, you really need to calm down because you're very agitated. And I was just like, oh, like, how can I be agitated?
yes, I'm mellow yellow.
And it was sort of like, I immediately burst out laughing. And she's like, what? And I'm like, you just said I'm agitated. And I was like, no way I'm agitated. And I realized in that response, that's agitation.
I'm agitated. And isn't it a gift that you have somebody working with
Oh,
you that picks it up and allows you to chill and turn yourself over to her or him for
oh, I
that
give
whatever
thanks
time.
to these angels. I give
Yeah.
thanks to these angels. And again, I think that's further to my story is that there are far more people doing good in this world, doing wonderful, angelic, loving actions.
Me
We
too.
have to be better about highlighting it and speaking about it.
Yeah, we really do. Yep.
I
Okay.
think we could
I
challenge
have
all of
homework.
ourselves to,
What's that?
rather than saying about sort of the impact of the Haitians eating cats, let's talk about how the community like really rallied to like protect them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
find a way of telling the story.
There's a lot of love out there. A lot of people want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people are suffering at this time because they see so much evil or lack of kindness or lack of love or hatred, and they don't want to live in that world. The world that they're trying to create is one of love for their kids, for themselves, for their partner. So the beat goes
Perhaps
on.
perhaps you could do a challenge on your Facebook and write a post and say, rather than commenting to me, I want everybody to post a good story in their own
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah. Everyone positive story, and no politics if possible. But
No, just how a community or how somebody showed love.
that's that's great. That's what that's what we'll do.
Let's start a love movement.
Oh, hey, listen, it started in the '60s, at least in my lifetime,
I
and
mean, let's do it again.
I don't know
I'm
why
here for it.
I don't know why it didn't just keep going. I actually think it is. I think a
I
lot of
think
us,
it's going. I think it's just overshadowed by the sensationalism right now.
yeah. And can I say one last little thing? Because I
Yeah.
have 1 minute. The thing, Haley, that disgusts me is how much money is spent in advertising and in politics. All of those millions and millions of dollars could go into an inner city school and turn on the lights and have a toilet that flushes. Why is it all paid to TV for a commercial that most of us aren't seeing because we don't watch TV anymore?
I bet you that there is a story or 100 about private donors doing exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, there are. I mean, I already am working on one with Haiti.
So
People have
let's,
taken over
I
the
think
world.
if we paid more attention to that, more money would go to it.
Yeah,
Because everybody wants to be a hero, even if the ones have a lot of money and they're just doing things because they want to influence.
Yeah.
They want somebody to be like, oh, wow, you did that. Let's make them change their attention to things that we want.
Yeah. Yeah. And that they really want themselves.
They really want
They
themselves.
just have to be reminded.
They have to be reminded that their fear is an illusion.
And that they're good people.
They're good people. They still deserve love.
And
They
the
still
people
deserve to experience love.
Yep. Yep. Okay, it looks to
All
me.
right. On that loving note, I love you and I'm incredibly grateful for my time with you. And I
Me
hope
too.
you have a wonderful weekend.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
In love.
Mwah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.